Snowflakes Fall Silently Upon Wren's Nest by N. Perou. The cold, icy wind wrapped itself around Lucy's tiny fingers. A harsh snowfall had fallen the previous night, which had made the uphill trek to school hard and tiring. Lucy dragged her feet through the untouched snow. Her cold feet felt enormous in her thick, insulated pink snow boots. Lucy's mum hurried her daughter along, but Lucy was hesitant. She wasn't particularly looking forward to starting a new school, when she could be at home in the snow playing with Lucky, her new 10-week-old Labradoodle puppy. A present that was given to her to acknowledge all the change Lucy had been through and how well she had adapted to a new start. As Lucy and her mum turned the corner into Marigold Crescent, Wren's Nest Primary School stood out tall and proud. Lucy stopped in her tracks. Her knees wobbled like jelly. "Come on, sweetie," whispered her mum. "It's a brand new adventure for us all." "I'm sure you'll make lots of new friends today." But secretly, Lucy's mum was just as terrified as Lucy was. Lucy expected to see lots of other children with their grown-ups, but the school seemed deserted. "What time is it, Mummy?" questioned a high-pitched voice. "Just before 9, replied Lucy's mum. Rather sternly she added, "Please hurry up, Lucy, I can't be late for my first shift." Lucy's mum had been requested by Russell's Hospital to help with the increasing number of admissions for COVID-19 patients. She worked as a specialist nurse on one of the high-dependency COVID wards. The 12-hour shifts meant that Lucy spent a lot of her time with her uncle, using him as their support bubble. This is to ensure that Lucy always has someone to take care of her when Mum is working. Both her uncle and her mum juggling frontline jobs and a home life on a daily basis. Wren's Nest had been a godsend. A place had been offered to Lucy to come into school as a key worker child, as schools were now all closed. On January the 5th, 2021, the UK was sent into Tier 4, into yet another national lockdown. Lucy, at just 6 years old, didn't understand why things had to change, why she'd had to leave her family and friends behind, move house, and go to a different school. But Lucy's mum had assured her that it was the right decision to make. The butterflies in Lucy's tummy made her feel sick with worry. She wasn't looking forward to her first day at Wren's Nest at all. Lucy began to panic, and her face felt hot and flustered. The snow came down, thick and fast. Crystal snowflakes landed upon Lucy's fur-trimmed hood. As her eyes looked up to capture the beauty of nature, Lucy's eye caught a glimpse of something red moving closer and closer. Lucy's hand gripped her mum's right hand tight. As mother and daughter stood entwined together, they hugged each other in a tight embrace. A new voice spoke softly as Lucy peeked up. "Hi, Lucy, we've been expecting you." She was very tall, and Lucy couldn't take her gaze off this lady's long, red locks of hair, which were beginning to turn white from the silky, silent snowflakes. She bent down to Lucy and said, "I'm Mrs. Parks, the head teacher. Would you like to come inside and have some breakfast?" Lucy looked at her mum, her lip beginning to quiver. "It'll be okay, Princess, I promise. I can't wait to hear all about your first day." Lucy's mum bent down to give her daughter a kiss, struggling to hold back the tears. Mrs. Parks smiled at Lucy's mum, and with a reassuring glance, she took Lucy by the hand, and together they walked along the snow-filled drive and into school through the automatic glass doors. The heat overpowered Lucy as they walked into school, making her fingers and toes tingle and burn. Adult chatter could be heard, but children's voices remained absent, almost ghostly. Running water gushed, and Lucy thought that it was coming from the aquarium. She walked towards it, seeing a multitude of rainbow colours which danced before her very eyes. Lucy pressed her nose up against the glass, taking in as many colours as she could possibly imagine. Suddenly, a face reflected in the water, making Lucy jump. Miss Moran, the deputy head, smiled. Lovingly at Lucy. Nice to meet you, Lucy. Would you like a bagel and some milk? Then we can go and meet the rest of your class. Lucy beamed. Finally, she would get to see some other children. Lucy nodded enthusiastically. She had still yet to find her voice, for now action spoke louder than words. After breakfast, Miss Moran took Lucy by the hand and led her up the steps towards a new classroom. The corridor seemed to go on forever and ever. Glass windows towered from floor to ceiling. Lucy tried to peek into the darkness, but each classroom remained empty. Lucy felt alone. Where are the children? She thought. As they walked, voices got louder. Lucy picked up her pace. She counted 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 other people talking. She tugged on Miss Moran's hand. Nearly there, she says. It's the last classroom on the left. Lucy could see the classroom light was on, and her heart skipped a beat. Lucy counted maybe 10 children sat on the blue-numbered carpet in front of a large white board. She recognised the story that was being read out to them. It was one of her favourites, The Very Hungry Caterpillar. A pretty lady in a black pinafore dress and mustard-coloured top smiled contentedly at Lucy as she reached out her hand to welcome Lucy into the group. The children watched Lucy suspiciously, yet they invited her regardless and surrounded her with smiles and open arms. The lady's voice felt calm and reassuring to Lucy, which made her relax, which helped to ease away all of her worries and anxieties. Lucy wondered why there weren't many children. Maybe the school just doesn't have a lot of children, she thought. Lucy's bottom lip began to tremble again, and a silent tear rolled down her cheek. Lucy felt an arm wrap around her shoulder, which embraced into a gentle hug. But it was too late. Floods of tears poured out uncontrollably. Lucy indecisively muttered, I want my mummy, which came out in fits and starts. Sometimes all you need is a simple gesture, a heartfelt interaction to make you feel safe. In the eyes of a child, acts of kindness will quite simply connect you both. Once the tearful sobs had subsided, Lucy lifted her head off the lady's shoulder. Lucy didn't recognise this lady. In fact, she wondered where she had come from. The lady, she didn't speak. She just smiled at Lucy and waited patiently for her to speak first. Mrs. Allport, the teacher in the black dress, was explaining to the other children that they would be trying different kinds of fruit, just like the hungry caterpillar did in the story. Lucy peered over inquisitively at the other children, longing to join in, her body shifting onto a chair next to the other children, making sure, however, that the lady with the kind smile stayed close by. As Mrs. Allport spoke softly, all the children, including Lucy, picked up their first piece of fruit. It was a ripe plum, and as Lucy bit down into the crunchy exterior, the bitterness made her eyes twitch and the juice slid down her chin. Lucy giggled. The kind lady got a soft tissue to dab at Lucy's chin. "Say cheese, everyone," stated Mrs. Allport as the camera flashed brightly. Lucy blinked quickly as white spots danced around like stars in her eyes. Lucy reached out for some paper and a pencil and wrote her name in the top corner. As the children talked about the very hungry caterpillar, Lucy picked up another piece of fruit, and with a smile she took a very large bite. After a hot meal, the children played cautiously on the gritted playground. Lucy rolled snow into a ball, shouting to the others to come and help her build a snowman. Together they worked tirelessly, rolling around the thick powdered snow. Bit by bit the body began to form, and the other children turned their attention to making the head. Their efforts had been rewarded, and their creation resembled a somewhat balanced yet lopsided snowman. The scene made everyone smile. Lucy asked if a photograph could be taken, a picture-perfect attempt at bringing everyone together. Lucy spent her afternoon with the rest of her class bubble, making papier-mâché. She took her time, carefully and precisely adding piece after piece of newspaper squares, and checking the bloom was thoroughly covered. The afternoon flew by. Lucy's character had changed completely, smiling from ear to ear. She hadn't just made one friend today, Lucy had made a classful. Through time and patience, Lucy's teachers were able to secretly guide her through the day. By trusting the adults, Lucy worked together with them to create a secure bond of loyalty and respect, to be in a place where she felt safe and secure. Lucy waited patiently for her uncle by the jigsaw doors. Once inside, she bounded through the snow to reach him. As she flew into his arms, he asked, "You had a good day?" To which Lucy replied, "The best." And with that, Lucy turned around with her biggest smile you've ever seen and waved enthusiastically to all her teachers and to all her newfound friends. Lucy's uncle had a heartfelt gratitude to everyone at Wren's Nest. In this crazy pandemic, when no one knows what to do or what to say, Lucy was accepted and offered a little bit of normality. For the first time today, the snow had stopped falling and the air smelt fresh and pure. Together they put on their masks and started their walk home. "Can I come back tomorrow?" asked Lucy. The uncle and niece stared at each other excitedly, and he simply replied, "Of course you can." Lucy looked up towards the white sky, and a single snowflake fell silently onto her eye. The end. I hope you all enjoyed my story.